Raymond, good afternoon. I
Hey,
guess
Ted.
your time. It's still it's afternoon my time too. So it's probably evening your time.
It's evening, just after dinner. So
Well, hopefully
I
you're not going to fall asleep on us here with a big belly full of food.
I was going to say I needed to grab a little shot of espresso, but just seeing you got all my juices flowing, so we're good. Don't worry.
Awesome. Well, good stuff. So I've followed your content on LinkedIn for quite a while. You, I gravitate towards people who speak candidly and aren't don't try and buy in too much to the hype. And I think you do a really good job of that. So I was excited to get you on the
Thanks.
podcast. And I think a lot of people know you. You got a very you've got a lot of reach on LinkedIn and a good following. But for those that don't, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and what you're up to today.
Oh, I got a scoop for you. Anyway, Raymond Blyd, born and raised in Suriname. It's a small country in South America. They just found oil in front of our coast, so we're going to be really popular in the future. Came to the Netherlands to study law. Met a girl. She gave me two more girls, so I'm ruled by women. Um, I specialized in intellectual property law and legal knowledge system engineering. Worked at a very large publisher, one of the top three in legal tech, for quite some time. One of my highlights there was being named inventor on a patent, or patent, I should say. So that was pretty cool. Um, then I just went to my head and I thought, you know what, I'm going to start a business. And that was just before the pandemic. Pandemic hit, everybody started raising money. Things went well for some time. But AI came along and I thought, you know what I did was with Legal Complex is, you know, collect data on legal tech companies and then try and monetize that data and look at what are the trends, where is investment coming from, who's investing, and which companies are they investing in? What are the interesting areas where we should look at? But I quickly realized that, yeah, I think 2023, 24, that AI would replace me, me and my data. So I went over here and did this AI thingy. And then my first customer was a very huge law firm. And then I thought I don't have the energy to go hunt those big whales as a sport. I'm, I'm just a hobby fisherman that just wants to stick alongside the lake and just catch small fish. So funny thing happened after that. So I quit my businesses, and then businesses started picking up. Weirdly enough, I don't. Um, and I think I found some pretty cool thing to do. I can't say much about it because they warned me. They said, "Don't tell anyone because you may get some unwanted attention." But I can say this: I'm working for the government at a really large AI project that is across all ministries, all municipalities. Um, and doing something that is fundamental to society in terms of how government uses AI. So I just started today, so that's your scoop.
Cool.
And yeah, and but alongside that, I've been working with a couple of companies as well, startups mainly, and ranging from product development to strategic advisory work, and helping to raise capital. So that's it in a nutshell.
Very cool. So yeah, AI
Thanks.
is something that you write about quite a bit and have some interesting perspectives on. And You and I, when we were getting ready for this podcast, we talked a little bit about valuations and
Uh-huh.
how firms might scale in the future in a tech-enabled legal service delivery world, and the potential benefits and challenges in getting there. And there's plenty of both. I think one of the more interesting opportunities in this tech-enabled legal service delivery world. I need an acronym for that. Um, is like when you build a tech company. Generally, if you're a rapidly growing tech company, you sell for a multiple of revenue. In this market, 6 to 8 can be much higher, can be sometimes a little lower, but a typical business sells for a multiple of EBITDA. And, in my wife and I, my listeners probably have heard me talk about this before. My wife and I own 5 gyms here in St. Louis, and they are all very successful, but they will sell for 3 to 4 times EBITDA, where this info dash, if we were to sell it tomorrow, would sell in this market for anywhere from, I don't know, 6 to 10 times revenue, which is a much better
48.
number. What do you,
40, 48.
48?
I
I
made a
like that.
calculate.
I like that even
Well,
better.
well, it depends. Let me just put an asterisk on that. Were you founded before 2023 or after?
Just before January
Just before.
2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you genuinely say it's a native or yeah, post AI startup?
So we are AI adjacent, I call us. So
Uh-huh.
we provide enablement. So our product gets deployed in the client's M365 and Azure tenant, and we have tentacles into all the back office systems that then make available all of the Microsoft's services on their data, such as Azure AI Search, Azure OpenAI, Copilot, Power Automate. So we are an enabler, kind of the selling pickaxes and shovels in the gold rush kind of model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's where, yeah, I call us AI adjacent.
Yeah. So multiples are crazy. At the top of my head, the they start at 28. The average is 48, and there are crazy ones for 500 something. So 200. I think was it Cohere that raised at 200 multiples. Um, and yeah, so but those usually are AI native startups, and I don't know exactly what Harvey Legora or any of these recent ones, Udea, have as a multiple. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's above 40 at the moment. But yeah, it's and the reason is there are now companies getting investment based on a valuation, and those valuations are then calculated. I don't know how, to be honest. But if you calculate it based on the revenue that they have, then you see what the multiple is, and then yes, those are at the height of the SaaS trend. I think 28 was a really good one, but now it's totally different. But
Yeah.
yeah, we need to we need to be careful because these are I'm hesitant to say these are bubbles that were created in the past, and we should learn from those. Um, we should be careful. Let me just say that
Yeah. And
in
that
valuation.
for sure. And a lot of that investor money comes with strings attached, such as in the case of a down round, some investments are protected where the founders assume the dilution on a down round instead of the investors. And going in too high sounds great. I mean, if you go in at 50x revenue, it's like, man, look at all this money I can raise and how little I have to give away in terms of equity. But there are gotchas.
Yeah, and the tricky thing there is that it, I might get canceled for saying this, but um, the reason why some companies keep raising and sometimes need to raise down rounds is that investors are usually not investing their own money; they just make money based on those deals. So if they are able to negotiate a higher valuation, they get a bigger fee for closing those deals because basically that's how the system works. Um, but at the end of the day, it's the founders that are saddled with, you know, those strings that you mentioned. And the VCs just sit on the sidelines and just you keep pushing pushing for more growth. And the worrying thing is, and that's what COVID did, is they stopped looking at growth and looked more at, you need to be a healthy company. You need to look at more profitability. So that was right after COVID. But then AI came along and it was like, okay, you know what? Never mind. Just capture market, we'll be fine. So it's a weird circle that the VC funding game is yeah ha- approaching these young companies, and especially in a legal tech space where you have long sales cycles, which now has flipped, by the way. Now sales cycles are super short. We had long contracts, short contracts is now the whole thing. So there are so many weird things about AI that don't weren't normal previous this this event.
Yeah, and so I've followed the tech world closely for a long time, and I have seen, like you said, in 2020 when the Fed dumped, I don't know, was it $8 trillion into of liquidity into the economy, and all that capital had to find a home. There was this kind of growth at all costs mindset amongst the investor community and the startup community, where CAC, customer acquisition costs, were something that was a secondary point of conversation. And then as inflation rose and scrutiny began to be applied to these businesses, like if you've got a CAC payback of 4 years, it's going to be really difficult. That's not a sustainable model. And then we came back to where, yeah, it was like profitable. Our strategy is cash flow neutral growth, so we converted to we took a C corp election in January for purposes of QSBS, which is a innovation program here in the U.S. For tax incentive purposes, and you get double
Mhm.
taxed on profits as a C corp. So we don't want profits. We want to plow all that back into growth, and we have triple digit growth, which is awesome. And our goal is to stay cash flow neutral, so we don't have to keep funding, and we manage our customer acquisition costs very carefully. We're trying not to get caught up in this wave of hype that seems to be taking place.
So there was this comparison between a US company, a legal tech company, by the way, and a Brazilian company. And it turns out they were growing faster than the US counterpart because their customer acquisition costs were lower. Same space, same model, same approach. So you're in a brutal market for that. And the other thing that drives up customer acquisition costs is that if you try and buy, let's say, traffic through Google with keywords, in legal in the legal space, those keywords are the most expensive on the planet. So if you're a personal injury lawyer in California or or what was it again? I was a maritime lawyer in Maine. Yeah, it's you have to pay more than $1,000 for a single keyword click or something like that. So that, but here this was predicted, by the way, that this the cost would exceed the revenue, so you would always, be on you would always have like negative margins based on that. But the ideal thing behind it was, if you keep growing fast, then eventually you'll have a tipping point, and then you start, you know, recouping all of those investments. But with every bubble, except I don't want to call AI a bubble, but except for AI, um, that has not turned out to be the case. So we had the dot-com bubble, then we had the e-discovery bubble, where everybody was going into document management, and that collapsed after the autonomy HP acquisition. Then we had blockchain. Everybody forgets that one. Uh,
NFTs.
uh, yeah, NFTs, but it was mainly ICOs, so initial coin offerings. But they were coming up with wild ideas of, protecting people's intellectual property on a blockchain. So those were legal tech ideas that raised a lot of money. Then COVID hit, and people started raising capital just to stay alive, and that was 2020. And then 2022 came, and then they released another. But the behaviors during the COVID were lockdown behaviors. So Zoom, DocuSign climbed really, the DocuSign was added to the NASDAQ 100, like 100 best tech company in the world. Um, but those behaviors weren't sustained. So, and the contract after that also, in the slipstream of DocuSign, started growing, and that also collapsed. And then AI came along, so now we're in the middle of that, and I'm not sure how that would pan out, because the cost of delivering AI versus the revenue is still a murky calculation, from my perspective.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you, and so too is really an understanding of where long-term value is going to be generated. Is it going to be the application layer? Is it going to happen at the model layer? Are these niche tools that I Horace Wu just had a post this morning, or maybe it was yesterday, about it with some of these niche legal tech specific tools that are creating a first draft of a legal document, for example. How, when you compare that side by side to the frontier, what's the delta? And then what happens when a player like Anthropic, who has now some sort of finance specific offering, I'm not familiar with it, but Horace mentioned it in his post. What happens when one of these big model providers decides to zero in on legal? If they do, that's an if. It's not a when.
It has already happened. So when Google came along, we already had legal databases, but people were using Google to find case law. And Google Scholar has a pretty deep uh, case law directory. So yeah, and that's now also happening with most of these AI companies, and that is, I suspect, a large amount, especially global, not the US or in these European companies that have an abundance of specific legal tech tools. But the rest of the world, they will just use the free tiers of AI to figure out how to implement it in their workspace. So that's one thing that will happen. By the way, that was one of the outcomes from the notorious MIT study,
Yeah.
that because they said 95% of pilots fail, but they specifically mentioned in there as well that That's because, and this was the little snippet that I posted with your name on it.
Hmm.
That's because people chose the free AI or the regular Chat GPT instead of having this bespoke, specialized enterprise tool. So that's one threat to their model. Legal has one specific dimension, and that is it is super local. So if you're an attorney in New York, you only need mostly New York law and case law, and that same principle is for a lawyer in India or a lawyer in Africa. So that's maybe one mode that that's still left. But I did some testing on these models, and they're getting pretty good at covering all of these legal jurisdictions. And then the question becomes, okay, if it's not the model, if it's not the jurisdiction, what will be a mode, to succeed? No, I had this presentation. I'm not sure if you saw it. It was called Nine Waves, where I just tried to identify for myself what are the waves that are going to hit AI into the future. And out of those nine waves, I identified two that I think would provide a mode. One is where you work on the infrastructure and not the model or the application layer, but you work on systems that would allow these applications to run well, more secure. Think of on-prem AI or more accurate. So having a layer of verification on hallucinations on top. I'm not sure even if that would last long. But basically enabling a user to connect their email, their calendar, their files, connect to their maybe their court system locally. Those infrastructure things will be, I think, of value. And later on in the waves, I identified when AI is going to start communicating with AI, what will the protocols be? How will that, how would that evolve? And people that are started working on that now and have the runway to stick it out will benefit eventually. Because quick example, I was negotiating a contract with three parties, three lawyers, by the way. You know how gruesome that is. And I'm a lawyer. My two other friends are lawyers, so we're all trying to be the best version of ourselves. But I noticed when they came back with feedback, it wasn't them; it was their AI. So I'm talking to their AI with my AI because I'm using my AI. So we're just the interface between our AI systems. We're asking it, what should I say, what should I answer, and it tells us, and then we just parrot that. So at some point, we're going, fade to the back, and those AIs will just start doing the negotiation for us, and that part I think would be fascinating in the future. And those are the ones, and all the others, I think, yeah, if you raise enough capital, you might, if you have enough customers, you might survive. But still, it's hard to compete against hyperscalers and these large model providers. Also, because they're going to go into infrastructure and consultancy, it's going to be um, a difficult, um, yeah,
Yeah. And
difficult road for them.
have you heard of the forward deployed engineer model that
That's a good one. Let me stop you right there. So, I was um, I was going to do a talk, so I'll give a little snippet on that. Uh, I collected over 33,000 companies with legal complex. 12,000 of them were quote unquote legal tech companies. Only 19 of them went to the public market, IPO. All of them are doing bad except one. And that one is using forward deployed engineers, consultancy model, old school. But the big issue there is, and it makes total sense if you think about it, some customer segments really need to deploy AI fast. think government. So I'm not going to spoil the one company. Um, they need to deploy it fast because they have a greater sense of urgency. And they know that the infrastructure they don't have. So somebody tells them, hey, we have AI, almost like the old Salesforce model. Hey, we have customer a CRM, but you need like an army of consultants to set it up, make it work for you, and that's what currently is making it the most valuable company, even more valuable than Nvidia. If you look at their price to earnings ratio, do you know which
Interesting.
company I'm talking about?
I don't. I don't. I don't.
It's a legal tech company, but it's really controversial. Also because some people think it's not legal tech, but yeah, it's currently has. I'm not sure. I haven't checked the last couple of days, but it was for Nvidia has a, I think, price to earnings ratio, stock price to earnings ratio of 48. This company has one of I think it was 500 or something.
Wow. Yeah, that's a very speculative situation. Well, you know what's interesting too? I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but historically, the market has penalized companies, tech companies, for services revenue, right? And by penalize, I mean you get 1x if you're lucky. And sometimes this is historically, this is changing because I've read some manifestos from VC funds who have, in fact, Andreessen Horowitz. That's how I learned about this whole forward deployed engineer. A16Z had an article about forward deploy engineers and how crucial they are to retention. And there's so much vibe revenue out there right now in the AI space. In other words, and by vibe revenue, I mean revenue that's highly subjective to churn. We just haven't had enough runway to really see, this revenue churn. I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So honestly, okay, let's name them because they're not legal tech. And this is my golden rule, by the way, and I broke it in the beginning of the recording, but I only name public companies because they can take it. I don't want to mention any private companies because A, they don't usually share their ARR, so I have almost nothing to calculate on. Um, yes, I support everybody in the legal tech space. But where was I going with this?
We're talking about like penalizing for services. Uh,
Yeah. So services. Actually, the legal industry is a service industry, and we supply technology for that service industry. Um, so I still believe that that will still exist in the future. But for tech companies, I think the penalizing in the past are actually they were I would say not rightly valued based on because SaaS companies were highly valued that had great margins, and if you can tag some services on top of that, that would be fine. But the SaaS company, that's where the value is. And then people started saying like some companies just give you a little sliver of a database and lots of services on top of that just to you know get it to work, and that was also a good business. And then you have those companies that just only did services and they also did great. But the problem with services is it's based on intelligence, and now we have something intelligent, and that makes it difficult. And then we had this change that you mentioned that, yeah, but deploying that intelligence in your company or in your um, institution still requires some kind of yeah, consultancy, I would call it. Does that make sense?
yeah, no, it does. And we fall into the category. So a good chunk of our revenue, about a third, is services, and it's a double-edged sword. So I the penalty comes not just because AI, the risk AI presents to service offerings, but it's also much harder to scale, right? I can throw some infrastructure at scaling my SaaS company, but if I require half an FTE for every customer and I'm onboarding 100, can I scale that side of the business fast enough? And the answer, it's difficult to do.
So there's this company called I can mention them because their CEO just left for Meta, Scale AI,
Hmm.
which was one of the bigger, well-known companies in the AI space. But technically, they were just deploying humans to improve AI. So, and there are a couple of others as well. And I looked at this in the beginning as well. That you know, checking basically AI outputs and enhancing them is now or has been in the past, in the recent past, up until now, been a really profitable business for some companies. Um, Look at translations, for instance. And also checking if the output or AI output is correct or not is going to be, I think, a huge space. I was talking to a friend of mine in India, and I told him, listen, if I were you, I would set up like this huge shop of super smart people because you have an abundance of really smart people over there to help those AI legal tech AI companies, improve their output. So, but like you said, it's tough to have a human run business. Law firms know all about it, and to scale on that front. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, there was a company who got exposed for they were presented themselves as an AI company. They were from India, and they had people behind the scenes that were essentially like concierge fulfilling these requests. I posted about it on LinkedIn a while ago. There were a lot of funny kind of off color
I think it
jokes.
was a builder AI. I
That
think it was.
that sounds about. I think that might be it. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, build. Yeah,
and I posted a
yeah. That was
meme. I
a.
was like, I think they're doing
Mhm.
it. I think you're doing it wrong. I don't think that that's not the model.
Yeah, the thing is that is what you say and what you claim. That makes it tricky because if they were pretty upfront with it, that they're using humans, and at some point the AI will get smart enough to uh, look at robo taxis. Some robot Waymo is, I think, allowed to not have a human driver in there, but all the others need one. And that at the moment is not a scalable thing because the thing you want to do is don't have a chauffeur there driving you because that's not the future uh, prospect that you want to have. But currently, that's well the road towards that objective to have how does it driverless taxis. Um, so yeah, it's all about what you claim, being upfront about it, having enough runway to get there, and try not to burn out of capital, which is the same thing.
100%. What about you and I talked about the one person $1 billion law firm concept and its feasibility? Like what are your is that a like I $1 billion is ambitious. So if you're a $1 billion law firm, you're roughly in the AmLaw 50. But I think that it is going to be viable in the not so distant future to have a I don't know about one person, but a law firm with a fairly small headcount enter into the AmLaw, which the floor on the AmLaw 200 is, I'm guessing here. I have the 100, maybe 300 million uh, ballpark figure to get in the AmLaw 200. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So again, I might be saying some highly controversial things. We already have it. We had an example, and he died under mysterious reasons in jail. Um, you know who I'm talking about?
I don't.
uh, well, in the tech space, we had it. So the $1 billion revenue one-person company would be a lawyer that is closely related to a highly valuable transactions like high mergers, acquisitions, big fundraisers, um, and is able to process those without having a entire firm behind them. Um, and when I mentioned it has happened before, is in the tax space, there are some tax advisors that are billionaires, and they only got there by giving tax advice. Um, and it didn't require that much technology to get there. So that's the really tricky thing about getting to that 1 billion mark as a lawyer or a quote unquote law firm. The question is, what technology would you need if you wanted to scale that way? So imagine the $1 billion law firm. I think we probably already have a couple of them in London, New York, or San Francisco. We just haven't realized that those are highly valuable operations. The question is, can that happen also outside of those three hubs, based on not the value of the transaction, but the volume of transaction? There was one example that I saw, and I'll be honest, I think it was Caroline Elephant that posted about it. That there was this guy on Upwork that did trademarks, and he was making like $40,000, and his whole operation was AI, and filling out these forms and doing that. I think would take a way longer time to happen. But in between, you're going to get some variation of what I mentioned. Individuals that are close to other high network individuals or high value transactions. And at the other end is somebody that's able to tap into some high volume and then also high value transactions, and is able to scale that with just using technology. But it would take it would take some time before they get to a billion. What we do see is that some startups are on their way there, um, but they need to still hire, especially in the legal space, hire tons of people, especially for sales and for customer support, to support their growth. So yeah, it won't be a legal tech company. That's why I said it's going to be a law firm or a lawyer. Still haven't guessed who I was mentioning.
No.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh. So I'm not familiar with any of his business dealings, only the things that made the press.
So yeah, so in the press it was mentioned that the way he made his money was giving tax advice to two individuals.
Interesting. I did not
Now,
know that.
if you only take that income and he became that wealthy, then yeah, that's we won't talk about all the other stuff because we're not professionals. We just talk about the legal stuff. But that's the story
Huh.
I heard.
Interesting. Well, what about capital? So, you know, capital flowing into the legal profession, at least here in the US, we still have model rule 5.4 that prevents non-legal ownership in all states except Arizona and kind of Utah. I know things are different elsewhere, but how do you see tech
You mean
capital flowing in?
yeah, so when you mean that, do you mean capital flowing into law firms or do you mean
Well, into the legal profession, I think we're going to have we already have like hybrid organizations. Like, I don't know if you saw the Financial Times article on Burford Capital and their managed service offering or managed service organization, that they're peeling off like business of law functions and some quasi practice of law functions like conflict checking
I
and
have a theory
funding that.
about that.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the two things I discovered when I was doing legal complex, I was tracking VC funding, and usually VC fund tech companies. But also noticed they were funding non-tech companies, services companies, sometimes even law firms. I was like, huh? How can that happen? But yeah, if you really drill down in, for instance, Crunchbase, you'll find that even law firms are able to raise VC capital. However, what usually happens is they get private equity funding. That's the capital that is coming in because private equity has been raising like crazy continuously. And they need to deploy all of that capital, but they can only deploy it to a company that already has revenue. So VC companies, startups, yeah, they have revenue, but it's heavily subsidized revenue. So the PE model. But what I discovered, and I won't name names because I have a family to protect, and I don't want to get sued into oblivion, is that some law firms have tech hubs or other operations, and since they need that capital, they're saying, okay, we're spinning this off, and this PE firm is buying this portion of our operations, and it's usually a tech company, and but I think it's a bit disguised as we need to raise debt because we're in trouble, and the only way to cover all of this up, I wouldn't say cover, but fashion this whole deal is if we just say this is the part that they're acquiring for this money, and we're getting this money, and then we can you know continue operating. But the interesting that I discovered since after COVID, since 2022, not only the down rounds, but a way more depth. And I think I posted about it, and I talked about it with Richard Truman in the last post I did end of 2025. That uh, more legal tech companies are raising debt, more law firms are raising debt, more companies overall are raising debt, and even though interest rates are this high, it still continues. And that means that demand somewhere is constrained, and that's a bigger worry for everybody else. And that's why the growth in legal tech companies, their ARR, I mean, or the revenue, is so crazy to me because where is that capital coming from? Who's who's believing that they are able to grow to 100, 200 million in ARR this fast? It took Cleo 14 years to get to 100 million ARR.
It did. It did.
Yeah, and an amazing Superman of a CEO, honestly, because the Felix deal that is, how many how many companies had their Waterloo at Felix, and he succeeded, which is amazing to me.
I know it is interesting seeing that play and how it seems like they have ambitions to kind of go up market, which Clio is more on the small and solo space today. It seems like that acquisition
I
was
have I have another scoop. I
what's
just
that?
discovered this. Um, so help me keep on track because my brain goes sometimes on another mission. Um, the fastest growing AI app were recently announced on A16C podcast, and they were using similar web and a couple of other providers to look at traffic to those sites, and then they discovered these are the top AI apps in the world. What I did was, okay, let me see what the top legal AI apps were. You know who was number one? Clio Duo,
Interesting.
based on traffic.
Huh.
And there were a couple of other names where I was like, really? And there were a couple of names that weren't on the list was like, oh, really? Yeah, there are some companies, like, again, I don't want to um, push any, I'm a supporter of any private company in legal tech, but there were some companies that you don't see anywhere, but their guerrilla SEO marketing is off the chain, and they have a freemium model. So basically, everybody eventually, if you just do a Google search like "give me free legal AI," you'll find those, and they'll be the top hit. And yeah, they are based on traffic. some of the top companies in legal tech.
Interesting. Well, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you one question that I know the time flies by. Uh, you had some thoughts on AI hallucinations in legal work, and like, what is the current state of AI hallucinations and like challenges around detection?
By this time next year, in legal, it would be 98% fixed. Um, investing, investing. So I'm really scared because I have a project venture at the moment looking at how to do evals. And I'm not the only one. There are a couple of others, passionate people that want to fix this problem. Because I also see it as an infrastructure problem. Um, but if you try and bet against models improving, it is a losing bet. So that's the scary thing to me. Um, I ran tests. So when I stumbled upon this, I ran tests on open source models, and they were horrible on legal data. But the frontier models, the closed models, the cloud models, they were constantly improving. And now with their hybrid architecture, whereby some of them are doing web search, under the hood, others are routing or whatever. Maybe they're just using straight up index search in the back end, and then have a model go in and some, I don't know what they're doing, but slowly but surely hallucinations have been reducing. Now, what does a judge think a hallucination is a totally different story than when a model hallucinates. One example that springs to mind is a judge recently said, these are 19 hallucinations. I'll explain them one by one. And she named one of them called what they call a parenthetical quotation, meaning it was a quote of a case in another case. Now, so the model, I assume, the model found the quote and attributed it to the wrong case, but it was in the case, just not that specific case. Now, the judge said in that sense, you need to be honest, say that it's a quote of a case within this case. So you have to do some extra referencing in that part. But technically, it wasn't a hallucination. So the models are getting better. I can give you the GPT-5 is uh, almost near perfect. Grok in reasoning, Grok 4 is amazing. So if it gives you an answer, sometimes it looks weird, but if you look at how it came to that answer, the reasoning behind it in legal, it's fascinating. And for instance, Perplexity, what I found through the API, if you're looking for recent cases and statutes, is doing also amazing. I found the latest labor law case in the Netherlands that was like published almost recently. I found it through Perplexity, Dutch. Okay, it's not US but Dutch. So yeah, it's hallucinations have two components. One is what the model provides you and how you put it in your brief to the judge. Those are two separate things we need to, you know, look at it differently, I think.
Do you remember the Stanford paper? Guys, I think it's maybe almost 2 years old now. Their definition of hallucinations was very broad, and I thought too broad. Some things weren't actually hallucinations; they were the models just got it wrong. Like that's not a hallucination per se, in my mind.
So that's what I said. It's hard to see objectively in legal what you, let's say, it's easy to see objectively what a hallucination is, but sometimes you get to a subjective part and then it becomes harder to, see it as a hallucination. Here's the tricky thing. For lawyers that are pleading a case in front of a judge, let me put it differently. Anybody that argues a case all the way up to the Supreme Court is hallucinating. Okay, up until the court makes a decision, all of them are hallucinating legal facts up until that point. So every lawyer that goes to court, has to defend his or her client to the best of their ability. So they're going to find arguments, craft really clever arguments, and some of them get prizes, and some of them are hallucinated. But yeah, but there are some strict things like you cannot quote something that is not in the case and then name that case. So those two things need to be objectively accurate, and you shouldn't have typos in your number references and IDs and stuff like that. So, but it's yeah, it's a tricky thing. One last thing that I wanted to mention about the legal space and AI.
Yeah.
Large language models cannot solve subjective problems that have no data. They can only solve objective problems that have sufficient data. If we decide tomorrow that assisted suicide is legal and it wasn't in the past, then we'll go for that. A model cannot predict that. It's really hard for them to judge that. So yeah, it's we're going to have a wonderful world coming up. Weird and wonderful, fascinating. Great times to be alive, man.
It is. It's a great time to be in legal tech. I know there's a lot of, our 100% of our customers are law firms. And I've had I've had peers say, "Aren't you worried about what's going to happen in the legal space? Like, not that it's all going to go away, but there's going to be a reshuffling of the deck for sure, right? There are firms that are going to adapt and those that don't. And, are you if let's say it's half, I'm making this number up, who knows what the actual percentage is. If half don't make the transition and end up getting either snapped up through acquisition, fire sale scenarios, or maybe just go out of business and get wound down, how is that how does that affect your book of business? And and that is a real concern when you are solely dependent on law firms. But I have an abundance mindset about this, and it's not that I don't ever worry about it, but I do feel like that lawyers are really smart people, and they also have some qualities about them that are documented. Like Dr. Larry Richard in Lawyer Brain outlines the personality characteristics of lawyers by studying almost 40,000 of them over 30 years. Like they're risk avoidant, they're low on empathy and resilience. Like, and that's true with any individual or any profession, any group of people. They're going to have strengths and weaknesses. But when you look overall at the big picture, I feel like there are going to be some home run winners who are going, and a certain part of my book of business is going to be those home run hitters, and there's a certain part of the people that don't make the jump. And you know what? It'll all come out in the wash. I'm not concerned. I'm excited to be in legal tech.
Yeah, me too. Lawyers, and the reason why I'm in here in this space is lawyers are the engineers of prosperity and peace. If we don't have them, we're going to descend in chaos and war. Okay? My definition of legal AGI is if a artificial model is able to draft a treaty that could bring peace to the Middle East. It's almost.
That's a high bar.
We will get to Mars. We'll solve cancer, all famine. There is no hunger, but that thing, human beings, oh, complicated species, really
Totally.
complicated.
Well, before we wrap up here, how do people find out more about what you do and your writing? What's the best way?
So I'm on LinkedIn, and I post notes there for myself. And sometimes I get 0 likes, and sometimes I get 100 likes. I never crack 200, by the way. um, but I just mark them for myself to just put a stamp on. This is happening. This is what I see, and I'm moving on. And don't email me. Just send me a direct message on LinkedIn. I'll respond. All of the other stuff is chaos in my world.
Gotcha.
But thanks for having me. This was This was wonderful.
Yeah, this
You
is a
got a
lot of
lot
fun.
of scoops, by the way.
Yeah, I like it, man. We're gonna have to like move this episode up. I keep a pretty big backlog of episodes in the hopper. I'm gonna have to move this one up so that there's still scoops. Otherwise, if we push it out too late, everybody will already know. Well, Raymond, this has been a blast. I really appreciate you spending a few minutes with me today, and
Thank you.
I look forward to engaging with you more on LinkedIn.
Sure. Hit me whenever you can, and I'll hit back.
Sounds great. All right. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
All right. Thanks.
All righty.
All right. You too. Thanks, man. Bye.
Okay. Thanks for listening to Legal Innovation Spotlight. If you found value in this chat, hit the subscribe button to be notified when we release new episodes. We'd also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate us and leave us a review wherever you're listening right now. Your feedback helps us provide you with top-notch content.